get to ask any questions you've got. But I've got something really cool for you. And if you have been living somewhere in a cave, or if you have, that's awesome, because I'd like to join you actually. But we've released our menstrual cycle mantra deck, and this is super, super cool, guys. This is like you get to pull a card on any given day of your cycle. I'm trying to get them in order here, but I'm not winning. And I'm going to pull one for us before we start today, which I think is, well, because I can. But I'll just show you really quickly. So the menstrual cycle cards, you've got your menstrual phase, you've got your follicular phase, you've got your ovulation phase, and of course your luteal phase. So depending on where you are in your cycle, we have a card to support you that you can utilize. Now, if you don't have a menstrual cycle, one of the best ways to get your cycle back is to pretend that you have one. You get to pick mine up tomorrow. That's exciting. So you can mimic this. So if you're sitting here going, "Now I don't have a cycle," I'd be like, "That's okay." You just start on the new moon with day 1 of the menstruation phase, and you'd move through each of them and start to mimic your body cycle, as in the moon cycle, because we are cyclic beings and our bodies are so influenced by our external environment. And so this is one of the reasons why I really want to come and talk to you about how to use your cycle to get what you want, which you can do. And that's a really nice thing, to be able to work with it and not against it. And I think it's really important. And we're not taught this stuff. But before we start to talk about that, let's just get one of these cards out. So I'm just going to randomly choose follicular phase card, and it says, "I am deserving of everything I dream of." And also the other thing I love about the card is then we've got down the bottom something that you can do that's tangible, that's a tip or a tool that you can then go and bring into your day. This one says, "This phase is perfect for your cardio activity and upping your intake of dark leafy greens." So each day of the cycle has something else to offer, but you can totally use the cards to support you throughout your cycle. Now, you've probably worked out that you feel different on any given day of your cycle, and this is where we start to talk about now how to use your cycle as your superpower. Oh, by the way, if you do want to get these, you can go to natkaringoudis.com/shop, and I think I might be able to put a link here on Instagram, but I haven't got the link for Facebook, so oh no, I don't have it. You can go to the link in my profile. There's more than one way to skin a cat, don't you worry. More than one way to have a period. So if you do want to grab those, but they're available now. These are new, and we have a limited amount coming. So if you do want to get those before they're gone, then there you go. So using your cycle to get what you want, I think, is such a interesting idea, because the number one thing that we do wrong when it comes to our cycle is fighting against it. We fight against our period. If you're the person that has to schedule out 2 days in the calendar because you know it's going to be rotten and you're fighting against it, the first thing that we can start to do is observe and understand the ebbs and flows of our cycle. If we can understand the ebbs and flows of our cycle, then we can start to be more aware of what's happening at certain times, and then what do we need to do at those certain times so that we can perform. And one of the best things that you can work out is that the times where you aren't feeling great, these are the times you need to do the bare minimum. And the times that you are feeling great are the times that you can pile things on to get stuff done. Now, typically the phase where you don't generally feel like you can do all of the things is whilst you've got your period, or just in the day or two leading up to your period. If you gave yourself permission to do the very least on those days and not push through, not only would you find that you'd actually come out the other side of your period probably feeling better, but you'd probably find that you're setting up a really great foundation for the next 28 days of your cycle, because each phase is dependent on the next. So setting ourselves up in our menstrual phase can then have a flow-on effect to setting us out, to making sure that the rest of our cycle actually is really supported. So what if actually working with your cycle required you to recognize at various phases how you're feeling. And the best way to do this is to actually note it down, like actually keep some type of record, not just of when you get your period. We're good at keeping a period tracker and knowing when we have our period, but when are your signs and symptoms showing up and what is that actually telling you? And then how can we use that to our advantage? And so what this means is, like I said, rather than pushing against it, we can not only schedule in the times where our body's asking for us to go slower, but we can also benefit from going slower because we are doing exactly what our body needs at that time to be able to then up level again. So that's the first thing I want to say. First of all, acknowledge when your signs and symptoms are showing up throughout the cycle, and B, listen and don't push through. Do the bare minimum on those days to still be able to perform. And this is something that's taught often to athletes as well, or at least smart people are teaching this to athletes, that on the day that they have, say, they expect their period, but perhaps they have to perform, whether it's, athletically or whatever it might be, is that's the only thing that they have to worry about for that day. Do nothing else but that. But also, if we could use some other little hacks at various times of the cycle, then we can continue to layer upon layer support ourselves. So, for example, in the phase or the window before the period arrives, I often have patients increase their magnesium, because I know that there's a lot going on. Our body requires more magnesium than we can keep up with. When we don't have enough of it, it puts the body into a state of stress and overwhelm, and it can be a bit of a slippery slope from that point in time. So if the one thing that you did in the lead up to your period was increase your magnesium, then that would be one hack that you could start to implement. And then the one thing you did whilst you're in your menstrual phase is do the bare minimum. That would be another one thing that you could do to use your cycle to get what you want, because you'd be A, not over functioning, but B, setting up that platform. Hope that makes sense. So how important is magnesium? I don't take it. So your body needs magnesium like nothing else, and we're living at a time that we're not necessarily getting it through our food anymore, our soils, which is how magnesium gets into our food. Our soils have obviously been damaged and to a degree sterilized, and we're simply not able to meet our magnesium needs nutritionally. Now, doesn't mean that you should not try. You should absolutely try and eat the rainbow of everything, and you should also try and tick the box when it comes to eating, whole foods in the first place and ticking nutritional boxes. But I find that it is required for so many energy processes in your body and for your body to perform. And we also know that under stress, your body requires far more of it, so you use more of it, so more than likely you are finding yourself depleted. But magnesium will solve 99% of your problems. So I am a huge fan of supplementing magnesium, and it's probably the one thing. And I'm very much a minimalist. Like when you come and you have a treatment, or if I'm creating a plan for you, I want to give you the least amount to do with the most changes that we can see, because we don't want to add more stress to an already stressed situation. So I love that question. Thank you for asking. Now, friends on Facebook, friends on Instagram, feel free to ask questions and start to chime in at any time. I love answering questions. Don't forget your love hearts. And if there's anybody that that might like to come and join us for the next 10 minutes or so, please let them know that we're here. But you can start to see, like I said, that you can start to pull little ideas according to your menstrual cycle as to how you can actually get the best out of it. And that's working smarter and not harder. So when we move into a phase of our follicular phase, that's the phase where we're moving into from our period, we move into the follicular phase, and then we move into ovulation. This is a great time to start setting your goals. And if you can start to set your goals in your follicular phase, what it means is by the time that you get to your ovulation phase, you can start to execute the goals because you're feeling creative, you're feeling in flow, you're feeling good because of what your hormones are doing at that time. It is far less likely to convert if we're trying to do that at a time, so in the menstrual window, where we feel tired, we feel depleted, and our body's asking us to rest. So can you start to see how you can use your cycle to get what you want if you understand this, simply understand this. But also then we come out the other side of this, and as we move into the luteal phase, this is where we get to sign off. We get to sign off on our goals in preparation for us coming back into that hibernation phase of menstruation again. And so the cycle continues. So if that's all you hear, and we're going to, as always, we always have resources to share after our lives, but we'll have a very special graphic that you can utilize to just remind yourself of that little hack. Like learn when to strategize and create your goals, learn when to execute your goals, and learn when to tick them off and be done with them. And then also learn to rest. I mean, it's not that hard, but we are so driven and told that we need to be the same every single day, and we're not. As women, we're not the same every day. In fact, we're different every single day, which is confusing and frustrating. But I'm going to start to answer some of these questions, and I might not get to all of them tonight, but we'll see how we go. But if you do have a question, please feel free to leave it here. Okay, so should you see a doctor before adding magnesium as a supplement? It's a really good question. So it's very safe to add magnesium over the counter if you're buying, as long as you're taking the recommended dose, then there's no real reason that you need to necessarily see a doctor before. But if you want peace of mind, or you're worried, or you have underlying health conditions, it can be a good idea to seek the advice of your healthcare provider. I think it's really important to see the people that are able to speak to whatever it is that you're talking about. So your GP's specialty probably isn't in supplements. Your GP's specialty is usually looking at the everyday ailments that we have, but lots of GPs will recommend magnesium as well. But it can be a little bit tricky and a little bit confusing because you're going to get lots of different stories. So, I wouldn't imagine that you would go to your doctor for acupuncture unless he's an acupuncturist, but like you wouldn't come to me to be prescribed pharmaceuticals, because it's not something that I'm able to do, but I am able to tell you everything about plant-based medicine. And so we all have different areas of expertise, and I think that's why it can be really confusing and you can get different answers. So it is important that you are seeking safe answers always, and if you are concerned, then you should always speak to a healthcare provider, definitely. Which magnesium supplements do you recommend? Powder in water, ? I always recommend a therapeutic grade supplement, but that's because I have access to that. So it's more about getting the best quality that you can get your hands on. And in the clinic, we use Metagenics. Over-the-counter bioceuticals is really great strength and quality. You definitely want to be utilizing quality over quantity. So, if you go to buy your magnesium and it's like $4 for this big thing like this, as opposed to a smaller one that you like, kind of go, hang on, how's that $55 worth? You're going to get what you pay for when it comes to products, for sure. And this is also why often we can see that they don't work for us. Patients will say, I've tried that, it didn't work, but they've gone and sourced it themselves. Maybe they've got a sub-average brand or type of magnesium. And it is about having somebody that can totally help and tell you what's going to be right for you. And that's why sometimes enlisting in someone to do that can be really useful, but it is generally safe. But you would know if you have any underlying health conditions. The only time I think also it's really important to check is if you are taking other medications. You want to check with your health provider around the timing of taking things. And I tend to like to ask patients to definitely take them away from other medications, just in case there are any contraindicating factors, or some supplements can override medications, which just goes to show you how much of an impact they can have on the body in a good way, but also if they're not used in the right way, that might not be so positive. So if you are taking other medications, then definitely you need to speak to your healthcare provider. Had a hormone test recently and my cortisol was very high. I don't know how stressed you've been, but I think it's important to always look at why something is, not just that it is. So whenever we see something that is, relatively high or relatively low, we want to ask why. Why is that happening? And look into what's happening. I mean, it's probably a result of some type of stress. I think the tricky part here is that we discount stress. We think that we are superhuman and that we can just keep on piling it on. And it's not often until with patients I will say to them, have you been under extra stress or pressure? Well, hello, like the whole world is right now. So to think that that's not going to impact us, I think is very ambitious. But it'd be important to establish why that is the case and what exactly is happening for you. So if you've been through some high stress, remembering stress isn't just being overwhelmed. It can be collective. It can be past trauma. It can be what is your liver doing. It can be your environment, your sleep hygiene. Like, so many different factors equate to what can be problematic and cause stress and cortisol to rise. So definitely want to be looking at that, but also make sure you've got somebody looking at it that knows what they're doing. I've got some questions on Facebook, which really happens. My daughter is 19 and a half and experiences lower back pain when she's getting her period. What do you suggest she does? Magnesium. Start with some magnesium and see if that helps. It's amazing to help with inflammation, but that would be really useful. Obviously, at the period time, there's various reasons why we get pain, depending on what's going on and where that might be, but back pain is very common. Doesn't mean it's normal, but it is common to experience at the period time. So we've got to do things to reduce inflammation. So addressing stress, and it's hard. As a 19-year-old, we carry the world on our shoulders, the world of stress on our shoulders. So I would start with magnesium, to be quite honest, and then also look at, could you maybe reduce inflammatory foods in the diet, and see if there's anything else that's at play there. But again, using it to, you can use this as your superpower, knowing that she knows that on those days that she doesn't feel great. So rest is important, allowing herself to do the bare minimum, increasing some magnesium in the lead up to that. I probably would utilize it for one whole cycle and see if that helps. That's going to allow you to know if that's been useful or not. And then, you know, there's lots of other pockets of information that we could find out. What's the period like? Is it heavy? Is it light? Like, are there other contributing factors to why we're seeing that happen? Let me pick out some more random questions because there's loads here. Are cravings usual pre-period? I think we need to listen to what our bodies are telling us, but so often we do crave at certain times in the cycle, and often we're craving carbohydrate and we need to eat a little bit more in that pre-period window. So firstly, knowing this again and working with it, not against it, and being able to have the right types of foods to address the cravings. So knowing that we probably need a little bit more carbohydrate in this period of time, then we could try that first before we reach for the block of Cadbury dairy milk and see if that ticks boxes. And again, we need more magnesium at this time, and that can be another reason as well. So start with supplementing that as well and see if that helps. So vitamin D helps to balance our hormones, and it's really important. We see a lot of vitamin D deficiency across the board when it comes to just the way that our body is not necessarily absorbing it. We're not getting enough sun. We're not eating the right foods in combination to be able to utilize that. So you want to make sure that your vitamin D, it's a very cheap and effective supplement that you can utilize in the months that are colder, where you're not getting that exposure, to help to balance out your hormones. It's actually really, really important, and there's a lot of studies around it as well. Can magnesium help with regulating cycles? Probably if you're stressed and your stress levels are impacting your body's ability to ovulate, then magnesium itself isn't going to regulate your cycle, but the impact it has on helping your body cope more is going to be the reason that it helps somewhat to regulate your cycles. Oh, someone's pressed the question button, which I kind of love. What's this say? I'm trying to work out what it says. Did I miss the magic and periods part? Yes, but that's okay. We're just talking about things that help us to utilize our cycle to get the most out of it. And you know what? I reckon you're already clued up on this stuff. But we'll go over the takeaways before I finish, which I'm not here for much longer. So, what have I done? I've pressed something here. What's this say? Dark chocolate, yes, that's a good one. My cycles are very regular. Every 2 to 3 months, irregular. I was going to be like every 2 to 3 months, regular, but don't cause me any grief. They're pain-free. I like not getting it every month, but should there be other associated issues? So, I mean, you probably want to look at why. Why are they not regular? And we can do that by understanding what your hormones are doing. Do you have elevated androgens? What is your FSH and LH telling us? Should we look at maybe potentially there's some insulin resistance, PCOS, or is it that you're just stressed, got too much estrogen and too much of the not so great estrogen? Again, we don't really want that because that can be problematic as well. So we talk about this often when it comes to what are your periods telling us, because that really tells us so much about what's going on. But it's more so why. That's what you need to be asking the question of, why are my periods irregular? And finding that out to answer whether or not there could be associated other issues. And that would be really useful. So definitely go down that path of asking why and getting curious. I mean, every week I give you tips as to how you can utilize your symptoms to diagnose things. I think my most favorite and easiest is heavy bleeding, more estrogen, more lining, more bleeding, light bleeding, less estrogen, less lining, less bleeding, and starting with that and using that. But also don't forget, guys, that in my profile, if you go and have a look, you can go and do the hormone worksheet. It quickly profiles and really helps you to see the most common hormone imbalances that we see in the clinic and where you might fit into those. And that is a really great way to just start for you to get curious, to ask the right questions to your healthcare professionals to get the answers you need. So lots of resources. Take your pick as to which one that you would like. But yes, hopefully that answers that. One more question. What else have we got here? Thank you so much. Oh, thank you. Do you see your regular GP to test this, or a specialist? No, I think the hard part is that your GP might be like, why are you needing to test this? You know, you're under my care, and I don't think there's a problem here. I think being able to have a doctor that's able to support you in what you need is really important. So I think this is actually a great question, because there is a big gap between your GP and your gynecologist. And if your GP is reading results and maybe that's not their specialist area, then this is where gaps can be and lie, and where women are told that they're normal when they're not normal. And we see this happen all the time. So if you have symptoms and you don't feel normal, yet your lab reports are telling you you are, then it's time to move on to somebody that might be able to look in a little bit more detailed. And it's just seeing the right person, which can be really tricky. So I would always say see a specialist in the area of what you are looking for. So, you know, our specialist area is hormones, because I've seen it for so many years, and through research, study, anecdotal, science, all of those things combined, you can really get a sense of what's going on for people. But also, if you were coming to me for, I don't know, cancer treatment, that's not a specialist area. So I would refer you to somebody that could help with that. So I think always find the person. It's not that we couldn't support somebody, it's that we wouldn't necessarily be the best people for that job here, because it's not what we specialize in. So obviously finding the right people is so important, and being heard and having your questions answered with whoever you feel safe with doing that. And that's the main thing, actually. You always have to feel like you're being cared for, and that your questions are valid, that they're being answered, that you're not silly, it's not in your head. If you have symptoms, they are real. And that's the bottom line there. If you're being told that you're fine, but you don't feel fine, then you're not fine. They're not in your head, but we get told this all the time, and it's very common, and diagnosis can take up to 8 years for many women. And the reason that is happening is because we're not necessarily seeking the advice of the right people at the right time. So we've got to find these people for everybody. Okay. So one other thing I want to let you know, if for those that have been around for a long time, we do an intake of book club once every 8 weeks, and the next round of book club intake is happening. So if this is something that you have been thinking about doing, or you want to find out a little bit more, please head to the link in my bio. If you're on Instagram and Facebook, we will definitely post a link in here as well in the notes, in the comments. But book club is literally 4 weeks to helping you understand your body, your hormones, your health as a woman better, to answer a lot of these questions, to fully understand your cycle, so that you can definitely use it as your superpower, and to really understand what that means for those whole 28 days or so, depending on how long your cycle is for. We talk a lot about signs and symptoms, how to use those as clues. We basically teach you about you. And the reason that it's so powerful is, I think, that we can often do an online course or a program. You're doing it on your own. You've got no support. There's no one there. The book club is a community, just like any other book club that you do, where you get to hang out with other women and you get to ask the questions that you don't know who to ask them to, because we can then help guide you in the right direction. But book club is amazing. Thank you for saying that. For those that have been in book club already, thank you. You can go and tell the people. But we do start again in a couple of weeks' time. So if you do want to join book club, then now is the time to do that. But it literally is 4 weeks with support and helping you to become an expert in you. And once you understand yourself so much better, then you can definitely make great choices for your long-term health as well. So excited to start book club again. That's it for tonight. That's half an hour. It always goes so fast. Sorry, the questions we didn't get to. Come back and hang around again another time. We'll always answer more. But there are more questions on Facebook as well. I'll let everyone get on with their evening. Also, don't forget about the menstrual mantra cards. This is so exciting. All right, guys. So link in my profile for these as well. But thanks so much for joining me. Bye, everyone. Thanks for the love, Josie.